everybody, I'm Jammer, and you know what? To my surprise, Animal Crossing New Horizons did in fact get a trailer at yesterday's Direct. The reason I kind of thought that was, they showed off a lot at E3, and there's still a long ways before the release date of that game. So I felt like there was already so big of a news dump. I didn't really feel like it was time to already talk about new information. They could have saved that to another Direct or, obviously sooner to release. So in a way, I was right, because this video ended up being a recap of what they already talked about at E3. However, it's better showcased here because A, it's, a 5-minute segment trailer rather than being a 40-minute treehouse footage in addition to whatever the trailer itself was. And B, well, there's new footage. So, of course, we're going to comb over that and look for all the secret hidden details. Well, yes, most of the information is still the same stuff we already knew. There's still some new stuff to look at here, some new secrets and stuff we can take a look at. I've done my best to kind of organize this little analysis, but at the same time, we might be jumping around just a little bit. So, bear with me as we go through this. We're first, of course, greeted by, again, Tom Nook at the resident center. Nothing really looks different here, but that will change later in the trailer. There actually is a lot. This looks similar to what it looked like at E3, but there actually are a lot of changes and new things that are going to be appearing at this resident common area. But anyways, right off the bat, we get a first big look right off the bat at what is the new travel system of how you actually get to the island. And I was 100% correct. It was, in fact, a water landing plane. I got that one right off the bat. But there is some differences because originally, if you see briefly in E3 footage, you can kind of see a glimpse of what the building kind of looks like. However, here, it takes on a brand new paint job being the yellow and blue. Very cute. I love it a lot. If we zoom up a little bit more, hello, literally, we see the name of the airline right there, Dodo Airlines. So perhaps this does, indicate that there will be a new character, some sort of Dodo character that's like a pilot that can fly you not only to this island itself, but also to your friends' islands. I originally thought that Porter or perhaps even Captain would be the new person to kind of take you from island to island on this, water landing plane, but perhaps it's going to be a brand new character. One other thing to note is that this is your town flag right here at the end of the dock, and more than likely this can be customizable just like previous games. As well as there's now a roping off section around the dock, which is not typical to Animal Crossing. Most docks are, like the one on the right, where it's just, open, and you could technically, when you have the diving suit, you could jump off. So perhaps these rope barriers prevent the player from either fishing or also jumping off with the diving suit if that does in fact make a return. The next scene showcases not only some pine trees and some new flowers, but also where the top of your town is going to be, because more than likely, this is the top of the river. You got the waterfall pond feeding into the river. This is going to be the top of your village. What is interesting though is what's here on the left. Left of the fountain, there's an open area where you can keep walking in. But the thing is, you can't see any much more things behind that direction. It's not like GameCube where it's like a ramp up to the upper area where you could walk around, because from this angle, you'd be able to see the ramp. It's just kind of a gaping hole in the world. Now, there's no way this is a mistake. I think this might be hiding something, whether it means the return of some sort of main street, similar to how New Leaf functioned. I don't think that's as likely because, there's the new resident area where, Tom Nook set up. So I don't think there's going to be a designated main street above your town like in the last game. This could mean something. It could be some other area you could connect to, but at this point, there's really no indication of what it could be. Moving on a little bit, before we go on too far, I do want to mention right here, we first see, obviously, a fish. But there is something very interesting right in front of it. There's this weird bug slash thing skating across the water. I want to say it's a pond staker, but it looks a little different than what we're used to. It could be some sort of crayfish, but typically, you just fish those out of the water itself. It's just interesting because, pond stakers are usually just in small little ponds. This is something that's actually on the river itself. So, if it goes out into the middle of the river, you won't be able to catch it with your bug net. So this can indicate two things. One, you just kind of wait for it to, come towards the land and you catch it with your bug net just like you would a pond staker or whatever this might be. Or it could potentially indicate you can actually go inside of the rivers and swim around there, and then you can actually capture it that way, maybe using some sort of net that you carry around while you're swimming. More than likely, you probably just catch it with the net, and it's just some new variant of like what a pond staker kind of is, just this in this case for the river, but it's interesting to mention nonetheless. Next up, you see a view of the right side of your town, the coast there, but actually it's also the upper right area. The reason we know that is because we still see this cliff, the infinite cliff line up at the top. I definitely think it's the top area because if you kind of get a small peek at the top and what's up in that upper area, it doesn't look like it's an area that's actually accessible to villagers because there's quickly another wall in that area where you no longer could explore. I don't want to go right off the bat and say the return of elevation is coming back, similar to how in GameCube where there'd be cliff sides and ramps going up. But I don't want to rule it out entirely because it might be a possibility just because it does look like you could be up in, it does look like there's some sort of landing up in that area. But at the same time, it could be just something to give some variance to the cliffside rather than just being a huge wall up in the air. But what is interesting to see is that, you know, there's actually a gradient from grass into the ocean, which was not in New Leaf, because New Leaf, you know, had the entire island raised up in the air, and you had to, you know, take a ramp down a cliffside to then get to your beaches. I really love the return here of the more traditional beaches from the previous Animal Crossing titles, especially since we'll get to a little bit later how you're able to build your house on the beach this time around. It's gonna make your house a lot more accessible rather than having to go up a cliffside like a New Leaf. And here we get our first look at another villager besides the one that were originally shown off. This one being, of course, Bill. So to go on a quick tangent for a second since we're here, let's just go over all the villagers that are here in this new trailer. First, of course, we have Bill talking about his training time, and then we show Tammy. Now, what is interesting about Tammy is she is actually wearing a jacket, which is completely different from the normal t-shirt she typically wears. This is a new feature that looks like it's going to be here in Animal Crossing New Horizons. Villagers actually can wear long sleeves shirts, and it'll actually reflect on the model of the character, rather than them being restricted or only wearing the tank top version of every single outfit. Later in the trailer, we see Filbert walking around with a very cute looking Hawaiian black and white shirt. What's interesting right off the bat, he is carrying a picnic basket. Supposedly brand new item that perhaps you, the player, can even carry, as well as obviously now villagers can. What function it makes serve? It could be just aesthetic, or it could maybe serve some sort of function. In previous Animal Crossing games, you already were able to stack fruits when you collect them into a fruit basket. They could collect up to 9 apples or whatever kind of fruit into a basket by dragging an apple on top of another one. Perhaps this is just a way to equip the apple basket. So, you know, when you're maybe going around shaking down apple trees, you can just quickly pocket it and it'll go immediately in the basket rather than just flooding your inventory with apples. I think that's probably what its functionality is, if it has any, besides aesthetic. The next villager we have is Lily, hanging out on the beach, sitting on a stump next to the villager's home. Nothing super of interest here. Then in this scene, we see Butch not only wearing a long sleeve shirt, but what is really odd is the fact that, look, he just sits on the ground. And not only that, he's sitting on an angle. Now, this is such a small, stupid little thing, but this is a big deal. You've never been able to do this in an Animal Crossing game before. Typically, if you wanted to lay down on a towel on the beach, you know, you kind of just, using perspective, right? You had the tiles going behind you and kind of just stood there. You weren't actually even sitting on the beach, but you could pretend, you know. Beyond that, you know, you could have stumps as well as like public works project for benches, and that was really the only way you could sit outside. Now, apparently, villagers can sit on the ground, and not only that, they could probably sit in all 8 directions. And I think it's safe to assume that, you know, if the villagers can do it, I don't see why not you as the player can as well. I don't even know what button they would bind sitting down to, but it would be really odd if the villagers were able to sit down wherever they wanted and you weren't able to do something similar. I know, it's such a small, stupid little detail, but you know what? It's a big deal, okay? Being able to sit on the ground is a big deal, okay? I've always wanted to be able to just sit on the beach, relax in the sand. Like, this is a stupid little feature I've wanted for so long. And next scene, we see Royal fishing. Nothing super new here because, you know, villagers were always able to, you know, walk around with tools. But if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if they were actually able to use the tools. I mean, they are the walk around with the bug nets and the fishing rods and the watering cans, whatever. But I think I might be wrong with this, but I think this might be a new feature where the actually villagers are able to use the tools. I could be totally wrong. I feel like I have a memory of villagers watering flowers at the very least, but I don't know, it's kind of fuzzy. This could be a feature that was introduced in New Leaf, but regardless, it's still a detail worth pointing out. The next villager is Antonio, which is not only our first look at fall, but this scene is particularly interesting because what is he holding? He's holding some sort of book or journal. Again, could be kind of similar to the picnic basket and having just no really effect, just some sort of cosmetic thing that villagers can walk around with. Or it could be an indication of another new tool that the villagers as well as you, the player, could be using. If I had to take a guess, I mean, the original Animal Crossing on GameCube had the ability, you know, you could buy journals, and based on a monthly basis, you were able to write in your journal, leave a little log of your playtime, and it was a cute little thing to just, you know, keep a track of what was going on in your life at that point. Perhaps the notebook could be serving that function again here, and could be something the player could use as well. You could write again in your journal, or even maybe write down little short stories. Maybe even the return of sending out, you know, letters in a bottle, but maybe in this time you could like send out an entire little short story in a bottle or something. That'd be kind of cool. I don't see what function it would serve if it was in the player's hand anyways. I don't really know what it would do besides just being aesthetic, you know? So I think in this case, it might be more just for visual sake, but it could have some sort of function. I don't really know just yet. Next villager, we see Peewee again using the picnic basket for whatever means he's using it. ingredient? I don't know. Maybe collecting mushrooms this time? I don't know. We then see Fauna as well as Peanut hanging out and talking together. A neat little touch is the fact that they're both wearing, you know, the jackets like previously mentioned, but it's also matching the weather of the scene here. You know, it's winter time and it doesn't really make sense for them to be running around in a t-shirt, let alone a tank top. So it's really cool to see them wearing like and sporting thick winter jackets. Next up, we see Rosie now actually holding a bundle of sticks in her hand. This is, as we already know, a material that you can collect and craft with. But in this case, I don't think this will be something the player themselves will be able to carry around because it's just a random material. I think it's just something for the villagers to kind of make it look like they're doing something, you know? I think it's just a visual touch. We then see Agnes in her house. Then we see Wolfgang sitting on a classic stump, which is an interesting thing to even note right off the bat because we now know you can't cut down trees anymore. It's, well, not in the traditional sense anyways. You just kind of shovel it out and all of a sudden you plant an entire tree, which like is a little jarring for me. As an Animal Crossing veteran, I'm so used to, you know, if you chop it down, that's it. And if you want to have another tree, you got to replant that tree somewhere else. It's a little weird for me to see you just lifting up an entire tree and moving it, but I kind of like it for convenience sake. It does make me wonder though how you can get stumps like this, you know, like you used to. All you had to do in the previous games was just chop it down with an axe. Now we've already seen if you use an axe on a tree, all you do is get some wood and logs off of it. You don't actually chop down the tree itself. Perhaps to actually chop down the tree, maybe you need a specific type of axe, maybe like an actual steel or iron axe rather than using a little wooden or stone one. Or perhaps maybe once you reach the capacity of getting like 3 branches off, if you keep chopping it and chopping it, it'll stop wobbling and wobbling more, and then it'll finally chop over. That could be maybe how they go about, you know, letting you still being able to make stumps in your town. Because, you know, that's an iconic feature of Animal Crossing. And the final villager we see here is Lopez hanging out with his little bug net. And that is all the villagers that we see that are now returning here in Animal Crossing New Horizons. So far a small list, but I would be pretty shocked if all the villagers from New Leaf didn't make a return here. In exception to maybe the amiibo characters. I don't know. But I am looking forward to seeing some new villagers whenever we see that in a later direct, trailer, or whatever. Anyways, let's get back on track and kind of back up a little bit towards the beginning of the trailer. After we're introduced to Tammy and Bill, it cuts to a scene where both you and the villagers start running towards the community area from the docks where, you know, you landed with the plane. This could be just some development tricks. You know, they could have just spawned in those characters there and had them just run for the trailer, you know, to make it like look kind of cute. But this could also indicate to something else. Perhaps you were able to actually travel with villagers this time around, rather than you just going on your own to a friend's village or wherever you might be able to travel in this game. Perhaps you're able to actually take villagers alongside with you on your adventures to other people's towns as a way to maybe better trade villagers with friends, you know, to try to get the characters you're trying to get in your town. It could be just some camera trickery, but, you know, it could indicate to something as well. Anyways, getting back to it, we're back at the community center. There's some differences, like I previously mentioned. First off, you see, 4 birds on top of the little notification board right here. Like in previous games, this is probably an indication that there's, some news on the bulletin board. Why there's 4, it could actually indicate, there's actually 4 new messages, or it could just be, there's a new message, all 4 of them land, just, really make the billboard pop so you can see, yes, there's a new message to read. Beyond this, we have a pile of logs, cardboard boxes, a little radio, as well as a log workstation. Now, some of these we can kind of recognize from previous furniture items, like, the radio is a furniture item you can get in basically every Animal Crossing game. Because the boxes are kind of in the way of the messaging board, maybe it's just like, an aesthetic thing to kind of block the player from even accessing the board. I don't know, it's a kind of a weird thing. But what's really interesting is the log in the left corner. It could be some sort of workstation you could work outside instead of having to go inside of Nook's tent every single time. Or it could be just some sort of aesthetic thing, which I might be more inclined to say just because of like the saw and everything. I don't know, it doesn't look like it's as interactable as the other tool bench is. Anyways, this scene kind of seems like this is the first arrival of you on the island, and perhaps leading back to, those villagers coming in, this could be the actual moment you arrived at the island. Perhaps you and these other 2 villagers all booked the Nook getaway package at the same time, and all 3 of you made your way to this island. So you start off the game with you, Nook, Timmy, Tommy, and 2 villagers. The next shot, we do get a better angle of the boxes as well as the log behind it, and it does look like, in fact, the log is probably some sort of bench you can build, and the pile of logs, as well as the campfire itself, are probably all furniture items. The boxes are still kind of weird to me, because those don't really look like furniture items or really interactable items at all for the villager, for you, the player. So it could be just an aesthetic thing while you're, you're unpacking your life here on the island, or it could be just something for the sake of this trailer, just I don't know, just cuz. Next up, Tommy gives you your very own tent right off the bat, which is really interesting how they go about it, because what it looks like is it's just a little item that can go in your pockets. It looks like a little sleeping bag. And as we already know, you can place this tent on a beach wherever you want. So from the looks of it, it looks like you'll be able to actually go around town without Isabel telling you go 1 inch left or 1 inch right. You can actually select exactly where you want your thing to be. I'm curious though how they're gonna go back with it. I'm curious how it'll work, where it will be like once you drop it on the ground, it'll maybe show a preview of what it'll look like, and if you say like, is this right, you can say yes or no. Even though it's technically gonna be an item and goes in your pockets, I don't think necessarily it'll be something you can like drag around the beach, you know? I think that's might be a little too crazy to expect the fact that you could literally just like drag your home around and like push it like you could a furniture item. Beyond that, I'm also inclined to believe that once you do place your tent, it's probably going to be permanently there unless you do some sort of thing with Nook and talk to him about moving it. I don't think you could just go up, press B, and pocket your tent again to then move it to somewhere else. I would love to see the ability though to be able to move around your house and actually like move it somewhere else. That would be kind of cool because that's very different to what Animal Crossing has been before. You know, usually you're stuck where you are. But the freedom of this game, and you know, maybe later along the lines of you building up your village, you kind of realize you actually would rather have your house somewhere else. So I would love to, I really hope, and I would love to have that kind of flexibility to be able to move houses around. But if that's not a thing, I kind of understand, but I don't know, it's maybe an idea. So let's take a look at Tom Nook's workbench area, and it's seen some changes from the E3 showcase. First off, there's now an ATM machine on the bottom right with also this, you know, cord, assumedly probably powering the ATM machine itself. So what it looks like for now anyways, this is where you'll be, you know, storing all your money, rather than it being at the post office like it previously was in other Animal Crossing games. Maybe at some point, once you do build some sort of post office, there could be another ATM machine there, but at the same time, this seems like the building you're typically going to be entering the most, because not only can you craft stuff at the workbench, but you can also sell all your items to Timmy or Tommy. So I really do kind of like it as a one-stop shop to not only, you know, craft your stuff, sell stuff, but also access your bank right there and just store your money if you need to. Here we get a zoomed out look of Tom Nook's tent, and a new interesting addition here is the thing on the bottom left, this weird looking chest. At first, when I first saw the trailer, I kind of thought maybe this is your storage system because, you know, it has icons of books and apples and umbrellas and, wait, a mitten? Yeah, it doesn't really make sense for this to be your storage thing. Well, it would be probably kind of convenient to have it right here so you could sell stuff really quickly or store stuff as you would want to. I think what's more likely, considering the giant question mark on the front of the chest, is it's probably the lost and found. In previous Animal Crossing games, it was also called the recycling bin. It would be, you know, it was a place where, you know, villagers would either just deposit random items from their house that they just didn't want anymore, and it would be a place that you could get rid of your garbage after you would be fishing without having to actually pay the fee to actually get it disposed of by Tom Nook. So more than likely, that's what this is going to be here. It's going to be the return of some sort of lost and found function. But what's interesting right off the bat, you notice, like I previously mentioned, was the book as well as the mitten. Those two items were actually items that villagers could lose that was sometimes you would find scattered throughout your town in New Leaf. So I think this, more than this just being a recycle bin, this could actually be a real lost and found bin where you actually would return the items to the villager who actually owned them. Also, you talk to Timmy here and you can see his inventory of what he's selling. And it's kind of interesting to, you know, not see it laid out like you used to in previous Animal Crossing games. Maybe later at one point you were able to actually build a Nook's Cranny or Nookington's, you know, or whatever. So then maybe Timmy and Tommy are actually be able to have a real storefront. But for now, at least at the beginning of the game, it looks like he just has a little inventory of stuff to look at. You see the icon on the left and right. It just kind of toggles between the furniture as well as the backpack items that he has for sale. And a cool thing to notice right off the bat is the fact that you can actually sell weeds, because typically in Animal Crossing, well, first of all, they just disappear when you would pull out. But if you ever wanted to dispose of garbage, basically in Animal Crossing, if you wanted to sell it to Tim Tommy, you had to pay a fine. So it's kind of cool here to see the Animal Crossing actually encouraging you, the villager, to actually take care of your town and actually getting some sort of monetary reward to taking care of the environment. They briefly touch on Nook Miles, and it's still kind of vague what it actually does. You know, it's an achievement system, but what it looks like is you can exchange your miles for exclusive items as well as new DIY crafting recipes. So this is a way to now unlock new pieces of furniture for you to have on your island. And I think it's a cool way to actually give some sort of structure to players that might feel a little overwhelmed for the fact that, you know, you kind of just have to start from scratch here. With Animal Crossing New Horizons. Another quick thing to mention in this scene is the apple counter in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. First, we see the player eat one of the 3 apples they have in their inventory. As they do this, the counter goes from 6 to 7. It counts upwards. What's interesting is as soon as the player digs up the apple tree, the counter again returns to 6. And then there seems to be some sort of trickery here where as soon as the player does go to replant said apple tree, the apples in the inventory return back to 3. So I think there's a little bit of behind the scenes dev work going on here, but I have a pretty good idea of what this counter is for. The interesting part is that the counter goes up when an apple is removed from the inventory. Likely what this means is whatever the counter is up in the upper left-hand corner could be counting down to how many apples are required to still get in order to complete a certain DIY crafting recipe. So perhaps in your DIY menus, you can maybe set goals for certain projects and see what kind of required materials you still need. Rather than switching back and forth between the DIY menu or checking your inventory constantly to see if you have enough apples or whatever material you might need, this pop-up could then show up instead saying, okay, you still need to collect 6 more apples. Say you could go for sticks, for rocks, for wood, whatever materials the recipe might need. And another thing to mention, you'll notice that a lot of the tools throughout the gameplay here have a little star icon next to them in their inventory. This likely means that the player probably favorited these items. But what does that even mean if you favorited it? Well, it could mean that it could be an item that can be quickly toggled through using the D-pad or some sort of quick select menu rather than going through your inventory to readily equip it. That's probably the most likely case scenario, but at the same time, I can't really think of any other thing you would want to quickly equip that isn't a tool. What I mean is, like, what else would you put on the favorites menu besides a tool? There's not really any other item that would warrant the ability to be able to quickly select it without having to go through the menu. So I'm sure this does lead to some sort of favorites menu, but we'll probably see it later explained on another date. Let's talk about some of the seasons that are shown off here in the trailer. First off, we see this like very opaque looking green, because you usually have the really rich greens of spring, and this could probably reflect summer, but I'm almost curious to if the seasons this time around have a more of a gradient to it, because this green is very different than the typical summer green that we're used to in previous Animal Crossing. I wonder if as the months get closer to fall, you could actually see the leaves and stuff starting to turn more orange and actually like falling off the tree once it comes to winter and stuff like that, instead of just a sudden jump as soon as the next day it's spring or summer or fall. We also see, of course, spring, but not only spring, but the cherry blossoms making the return in full bloom, looking beautiful as ever. Oh yeah, it looks so gorgeous. So see here, later in the trailer, this is more typical of the greens we're used to when it comes to summer. Spring is more that neon green, and summer is the dark green, right? Though this weird olive green kind of looking grass is very different from the rest of Animal Crossing because there was no season for that. It was, you know, light green, dark green, and then it went right to fall. So maybe it does actually show some sort of indication that, you know, there is a more gradual change in the seasons rather than just a sudden jump. We also see fall, which of course is gorgeous as ever. And like having it golden hour, sunset hour for this, just like it's so rich in color and beautiful. And I really love how the weeds themselves also take on different kind of forms throughout the year. See, the weeds kind of look like wheat or have like their dry seeds at the top ready to fall for the next spring to regrow again. And of course the mushrooms make their return. An interesting thing to note here is the actually variance in colors of the trees. Typically when it's fall or spring for Animal Crossing, depending on what kind of tree it is, it'll depend on what color it'll be. If it's an apple tree, maybe it'll be a darker orange, and if it's a regular oak tree or whatever you want to call it, it'll just be a maybe lighter orange, and then pine trees have their own thing. But here you'll notice that there is variance in not only the colors for the regular trees, but as well for the fruit trees, which is very atypical to what we're used to. Usually the color of the leaves are standardized across depending on what kind of tree it is, whether it's apple or a regular tree. So to already see this kind of color variance is actually a small little detail, but it's kind of a big deal. It really will make your island seem much more immersive because, you know, trees aren't all the same color. It's such a small detail, but it's a really great touch. We also get a better look at winter, and what's really cool is how thick the snow is on the trees, because previously it kind of just like what looked like white speckles on the trees. No, here it's like clumped up and looks it's like really thick, like it snowed a lot on this island. It almost makes me wonder if you were actually would go up and shake that tree, if the snow would actually just fall off and clump on the ground, because it almost looks like it would. Like, how could you shake that tree and expect none of the snow to fall off? And speaking of seasons, another thing they kind of touched on here in the trailer was, you know, the new weather systems that are shown off here. Previous Animal Crossings was pretty black and white when it came to weather. It was either sunny, some clouds, or yeah, just raining, or I guess, of course, snowing in the winter. But this time around, seems to be a lot more dynamic. Well, first off, you can look at the cloud cover in the little time lapse, and like this is nothing like an Animal Crossing used to be previously, where there's like a wind change and like how they're forming, as well as like the intensity of rain. Especially the really interesting part is the overcast section with the intensity of winds. That's something I really did not expect, but adds a lot of immersion to the game, because now it feels like, oh my gosh, like there's a tornado coming on your island, because look at these high-powered winds. I really love how it affects like the environment, affects the trees, the weeds, and really just brings a lot of life to your island, more than just, you know, the cookie cutter kind of weather patterns that we're typically used to in Animal Crossing. Like I said, I think we're kind of in store for a more kind of dynamic weather system where more ever changes and has gradual stages of intensity, especially with this new wind system. And I think a great segue from that is to talk about the lighting of this game. Like, we all know how amazing this game looks. But even from the first scene showing off the dock, how you can see underneath the water, you can see the distorted look of the dock underneath the water in the foundation, the reflection of not only the airplane underneath, but also a shadow going on the water's surface. That is a really cool thing prominent throughout the entirety of this trailer, is the fact that all of these buildings, characters, items, all have unique and distinct shadows. It's not just a circle under the character like it was previously. A great example is when she's looking at the moon here. The moon is up in the sky, super far north, straight ahead of her, and it's off to the right, right? If you look down below, you can not only see her shadow, reflective of how this light source would work, but also look, you know, there's an actual silhouette of what the telescope, how its shadow would work, and as well as the lantern corresponds to that, in addition to, you know, even the campfire, because it's a little bit farther back, it wouldn't have such an extended shadow compared to the other stuff that's a little bit farther away, considering the perspective we're looking at. Really, these extra details that just goes the extra mile that, like, it makes this game look just absolutely amazing. Even beyond that, the tree right here on the right, there's like almost a rim lighting coming off the back from the moon basically being behind it. As well as the trees in the complete background are starting to become pure silhouettes because of how the light would reflect, and you wouldn't be able to see them nearly as much because of how dark it is outside. Like, wow, just wow. This is also reflected in how the tent themselves has a very unique glow. In previous Animal Crossing, if, you know, there was a villager camping, or, you know, the tent or whatever, you know, if there was a light going on in there, there would be a light source, you know, it would be lit up, but it never had this kind of glowing thing coming out, you know, onto the ground around the tent, and it really adds that extra feature that just feel like there's like a warm presence there. It's like, I don't know, it just makes it so much more lifelike. Also, these flip-flops are super cute. As well as the scene where, you know, the sand meets the water here at the ocean. Look how dark and gloomy it looks because of the rain. We're contrasting to how clear and blue it was in the previous section of the trailer, you know, where the sun was clear and it wasn't such a cloudy, gloomy day. Shifting focus a little, there's one more thing I do want to touch on, and you've probably noticed throughout even the footage I've been talking about, is the fact that the villagers have been wearing some things more than just the typical clothes that we're used to. First off, there's actually a variance in dresses. It's not just, you know, the tank top and then the skirt kind of C&P'd together, you know. There's actually a variance in different kinds of dresses, where like long dresses, short dresses, raincoats, like, and it's just they're all so cute. But beyond that, what's really interesting is there's actually been some sort of satchels and backpacks and purses and little fishing canteens and stuff. And from the looks of it, it might be just for aesthetic. While it could serve some sort of function and actually perhaps increase your inventory where you can hold items, perhaps if you actually use like the little fishing one, you can store specifically more fish in it while you're fishing. I don't necessarily know if it'll actually have an in-game function. It might be just some sort of cosmetic thing, just to, you know, better accessorize yourself in the game. So I don't want to get your hopes up too much just yet, saying, you know, confirm toolboxes and other means of storage beyond just throwing it in your letterbox inventory. This would be a really great solution to have like an additional inventory based on like the backpacks or whatever accessories you're wearing. But what's more likely, it probably might be just some sort of cosmetic thing. In the section where they're talking about the online, that the first thing to note the fact is that their Dodo Airlines is not yellow, it's blue. Where it randomly starts as a certain color, and then later down the road, once you're able to actually paint stuff, you're able to paint it a different color if you wanted. Just another layer of customization to your town, which I love. Beyond that, there isn't too much new shown off in this section. I mean, his Nook phone does look a little different. I mean, it might have some sort of, it almost looks like it has a Shekiah Slate phone case on it. I don't want to get your hopes up just yet thinking like you can get a Shekiah Slate phone case on your Nook phone, but it does look, it's not the standard green one that you were initially given at the beginning of the game. As well as what's really cool is there's an actual towel on the beach, something we've wanted since like literally forever. So that's amazing to see right off the bat. In this scene, it looks like he's running with some swim trunks on, but he doesn't jump in the ocean with this. It could perhaps mean there's still the return of wetsuits and you have to wear a wetsuit to go in the ocean. I would be kind of shocked if there was no swimming returned from Animal Crossing New Leaf, but at the same time, it was kind of a limited feature. I don't know. I'm curious to see what they're going to do going forward with it. But a thing that is very interesting though is the fact that there's this big gray rock right here and it looks like you could actually go on it. So it looks like there's going to be more variants to beaches besides just a beach. It looks like there might be some rocks that you could actually walk out on and go fishing off of, and just, you know, some more differences to your island that can set yours apart from others. Here we get a look at of what is probably this villager's upper left area of his village, because we have this, you know, wall around it. It doesn't look like you're able to get up there, even though there are some flowers as well as weeds, as well as maybe another cliffside up at the top, but this is probably just like, you know, the bounding box of your village. There's also this giant mushroom thing here. Like, what the heck is going on here? It could be just a randomly spawning thing, like if a bunch of mushrooms together just like create a giant one, or it could be actually even a mushroom furniture item. It could be like the mushroom bench, but facing the backwards way, so you actually don't see where the seat part of it, and it's just like a bunch of mushrooms. As the previous game, no, there is no mushroom bench that kind of looks like that. But you know what I'm kind of mean? Like, it could be chopped off on the other side, and there could be like the armrest, you know? It could be just the bench flipped around. Or it could be some sort of weird spawning giant mushroom thing that maybe you have to like hack with an axe to take down. If so, it could be like a source of getting a lot of mushrooms quickly because, you know, of the resource gathering that is this game. We see right away that the Christmas lights do in fact return here on the pine trees. That wasn't shown in the previous clip. Very, very cute. And this is another example of how the shadows change. I mean, look at the direction they're all facing now. They're all pointing to immediately to the left, like the light source is right on the right side of them all. In addition to how all the characters are lit themselves. The lighting is on the right side of the character, and there's a shadow, you know, on the front of Peanut's face, on the back side of both the villager as well as Fauna's head. Really cool to see like a very dynamic lighting system. Beyond that, also look, there's a light coming out of the cabin window off in the back as well. Very, very cool. Also, a cool thing to notice right here in Agnes's house is the shutters or shades that were in Animal Crossing Happy Home Designer makes a return here, where you're able to customize what the windows look like on the inside of a home rather than just being like the standard cross layout. So in this scene, we see a villager, you know, making his paths. First off to mention is the fact that this little workbench outside here, I think this one is probably actually functional, considering there's a path going up right to it. I think you're actually, instead of actually always having to go to Nook's place, you'll actually be able to set up a workstation, you know, close to your home, so you don't have to continue to always go to a shop. What's really cool though, right off the bat, is we see the villager kind of scrape off the ground a little bit to actually round the corners of his paths. You can already see that applied here at the base of his house. Really cute touch to be able to actually customize how the paths work rather than just being straight, just grid system like pathways. As far as customization goes, it probably could be, you know, you carve just the square out, then you can round the corner, and then if you do it again, it might just like flatten it out back to grass again or something like that. And then in this scene, you thought this one got past me. No, right here you can see the villager throwing some bait in before going fishing. And you can immediately see, look, there's a shadow of fish spawning right where she threw that bait. I think this is a really cool addition. People have been wanting Animal Crossing for so long. Rather than having to run up and down the coast of your beach or running up and down the river trying to find the spawning of a fish, or perhaps just trying to reset the spawn of your pond area so you can get the specific gar or whatever you want. So cool to see that you're able to somehow make some sort of bait that can spawn fish, and maybe even be able to spawn specific fish. You can maybe buy or craft specific kinds of bait to maybe attract to certain types of fish. Maybe there's like a bait for trying to get sharks, or a bait for trying to get sea bass. Why would you want that? I'm interested to see what other kind of additives we can see to the tools here right this time around. Perhaps something similar to how in Pocket Camp you can kind of lay out the, I think it's like the honey or the perfume stuff that goes in that little stump on the island where you can kind of attract different kinds of bugs. So things along the lines of that. I'm really curious to see what kind of other mechanics are going to be built off of the already existing tools here in Animal Crossing. And that brings us to the end of the trailer with beautiful sunset and the reminder of the release date. So I hope that made some sense to you. I felt like I was kind of just rambling for a while, but I feel like I did my best to try to structure it for you guys. If you can't tell, I am so excited for Animal Crossing New Horizons, and I know you guys are as well. But I'm curious, of everything we looked at today, what was your favorite part of this new Animal Crossing showcase? Let me know that in the comments below. And if you found any secrets of your own that I may have missed in the trailer, definitely let me know in the comments as well. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a big awesome like, and if you haven't already, definitely subscribe for tons more on Animal Crossing New Horizons. Now that we got the initial analysis out of the way, I think we can now, in the next coming weeks, we can really start to build off of some of these new ideas that were introduced here and kind of do more videos based on specific topics and potential new stuff they could be showing the next time around, next time they do, in fact, showcase this game. So thanks again, guys, so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya!